Hi, this is Karin Davidson for Living Energy Day, and I'm from howtotap.com. And today on Living Energy Day, we're coming down to the last two interviews. It's been a wonderful day and 24 hours. And right now we have Richard Flook, who is a Hay House author of the book, Why Am I Sick? And he's the creator of Advanced Clearing Energetics. Since the death of his mother at age 12 from breast cancer and his own herniated disc that rendered him unable to walk, Richard has been asking, why do we get sick? And also, how do we heal this naturally? And his journey led him to discover that there was a direct link between certain health problems and specific stressful events. And he went on to discover exactly how the body absorbs these traumatic situations, and curious to find out what would happen if he could reverse that process. And he found that the body would heal itself completely naturally and often with lightning speed. Now, and if you want to learn more about advanced clearing energetics, which you'll hear a lot about today, Richard trains the process online to practitioners around the globe, and you can find him at www.advancedclearingenergetics.com. And Richard, welcome to the show.
Hi, great to be here, Karen. Always is have a conversation.
Good. I'm glad you could come. So, why do you get sick? I mean, why do we get sick? Most people, we think we catch something, we become infected, something's wrong, our immune system is low. So, what is it?
No, it's none of those things. The majority of the reasons why we actually get sick are all to do with traumatic shocks. And these particular shocks are called, I coined the phrase, a Uden moment. I can actually show you what that looks like. So there's a Uden moment, and it stands for something that's unexpected, dramatic, isolating, and it's a disease where we have no strategy for dealing with it. And that's basically what causes a disease to occur. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I pick that up and teach that in my classes as well. So the Uden moment, what causes a trauma. So it absolutely is.
Well, what's very interesting is that we now know, and I say we, I've been doing a lot of research and a lot of my colleagues are confirming this as well, that disease or these shocks that cause disease are predestined. We are going to have them rather whether we like it or not. Does that make sense?
Do you mean predestined like at a certain time, or that predestined like they're going to happen to us?
They're going to happen to us. We are going to experience a shock, whether we like it or not. That's basically what it's all about. We have been doing some research into this, and actually, one way to think about it, I'm sure people have been talking about this, is the whole idea of epigenetics. Anybody that's come across epigenetics will understand that a trauma that has occurred in a family member, maybe as far back as 4 generations, sometimes even further back than that, can cause a disease to show up later on in a family member who has no connection or has not had that disease in themselves. That there's no correlation with hereditary genetics or anything like that. It's all epigenetics, epi being above the genome. So when I talk about a shock being predestined, I'm serious. There is a reason for this shock showing up in the body. And the reason for the shock showing up in the body is to do with this link, which I've recently made a very important link between water memory, memory in water, and these particular shocks. So is that a little bit too?
How does that happen? I mean, how does the water? First of all, what is a shock? I see that it's the Uden moment, but what exactly do you mean by a shock? How does it hit us, and how does it cause a disease to occur?
Well, let's do that. Let's go through a couple of slides very quickly on that. Okay. So, what causes a disease to occur? So it seems to be flickering here, and I've got no idea why. Are you getting that flicker as well?
Yes, I do see it. It's not too bad. There, it
Okay,
does
we're just going to have to go with it, and I don't know why it's doing that. It's very, very frustrating. Okay, so what causes a disease to occur is something, let's just talk about the story. I think I know why it was, of a Uden shock, okay? And let's imagine that there's this lady, she's been happily married for 30 years. She's got children, grandchildren, and she's been with this beautiful guy for 30 years and everything's fantastic. And then, oh, hit the wrong button. And then one day, she has a Uden shock and her husband walks in and says, darling, I got something to tell you. I've been sleeping with your best friend for the past couple of months. I'm really sorry. And so that's one of those Uden shocks. And what a Uden shock does is it shakes a person's world apart. Okay?
Yes.
I have a sort of little video there. We're not going to be able to hear her scream. I don't know. She might do it. She might not. No, she's not going to. But basically, this lady's shouting at this man saying, you're a complete waste of time. And these are what these Uden shocks actually look like. I'll play it again. And she's actually saying something like, you know, you're a completely waste of time. What on earth are you doing on this planet? You have got no time for your children, no time for your kids. You are an idiot, and I never ever want to see you again, blah, 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 blah. That's what is a Uden moment. That's what shakes a person's world apart. That is what it looks like inside our bodies. That is how we experience it. But then what's really important is that Uden moment, what it does is it lands in the body's heart system, okay? And then after landing in the body's heart system, it also travels into the body's brain system, okay? After it's done that, it enters the body's gut system, and then what's amazing is it washes up in the body's water system, okay? And why it does that is because these are the master systems of our body. This is research that I've been doing for the past 25 years has suddenly come all together, and basically we have the heart, the brain, the guts, and the water system. And essentially why the water system? Well, water is smart, but the other things are the heart, the brain, and the guts all have their own separate nervous systems. And water is 80% of the body, right?
Yes.
Water has memory cells. It remembers anything that is going on in and around it. And what happens to a shock is basically we get these different systems, and the shocks literally all land in a person, and then they cause a storm.
Do you talk a little bit more about how water has memory? I mean, yeah. I know Moto and obviously homeopathic and other essential oils and water holding information, but can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, how did you come about that?
Okay, so there's been a lot of work and study around water that's been going on for a long time. And I mean a long time, going back to the 1980s, a guy called Jacques Benavista, who was possibly France's one of their top scientists. And he, through one of his students, did some research into water, and what he found was water holds the memory of its surroundings. I'll say that again. It holds the memory of its surroundings. And he started doing lots and lots of research, and one of his other students was a guy called Luc Montagnier. And Luc Montagnier is a very eminent scientist, so much so he's a Nobel laureate, in other words, a Nobel Prize winner. And his work as well shows us that, well, let me explain the simple experiment that he did, and I've seen, and he had this on camera in 2014. And basically what he did was he took a little vial of distilled water, There's nothing in this distilled water, and everything's verifiable, by the way. Little vial of distilled water. And then, being a scientist who was responsible for the discovery of the AIDS virus, or the T cells that were responsible for that, I got to say that he was awarded with another American scientist this particular Nobel Prize. But anyway, he took a little vial of distilled water, and in it he put 1 drop per 10 drops or 9 drops of AIDS virus in there. They then take this little vial of water and shake it vigorously. Then they take a drop of that and put it in another vial of distilled water. Shake that violently, or not violently, but aggressively. And then take a drop of that and put that in another vial. They do that 10 times. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does it sound like homeopathy?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Well, it is, basically. That's what homeopaths do. So what we got then, I think, is something like 1,000 C or something, or 100 C. Forgive me if I'm wrong there, but basically it means that the amount of dilution of that that's inside the final 10 times vial of distilled water is there could be no molecules of that DNA from the original DNA in there. Does that make sense? It's something like 1,000 million dilution, equivalent to putting a drop of let's say AIDS DNA in, let's see,
Lake Michigan.
Yeah, that would be just a drop into Lake Michigan. That would be what would be left. So there's no particles of AIDS DNA in there. So they then take this, and if you measure it with what is called a PCR machine, which is used in forensics, forensic medicine, and you put that into the one of these special machines that measures DNA, nothing will show up. Okay, but they then put this, in theory, that's probably would. Anyway, let's not go too much. But essentially, then they put it onto a special little device which measures the sound wave that is coming off this water. They then take a sound wave of it. In other words, they turn it into an auditory sound. Then from this auditory sound, they can see that there is a marker inside this water. In other words, the water is giving information out. Bearing in mind, there is nothing in the water. It's just water. And traditional science would just say it's just H2O. There is nothing else in there. Does this make sense?
Yeah. And how does that, go ahead.
So then they get an imprint, this sound wave. It's just a noise. It goes, just a noise. They then take this wave noise, send it down a wire to another lab in Italy, because they're in France. This is Luc Montagnier doing this. And another set of scientists take this wave, this noise, put some speakers around another vial of distilled water, play the sound to that water for an hour. Then they take this infused, imprinted, whatever you want to call it, infused new vial, put it into one of these PCR machines, and it shows up with the same DNA that they put in originally, that 1 drop. After all that process, it actually shows up with that DNA.
And how does that relate to what you do and the water system?
Basically, the water system carries an imprint, an infusion of everything that you've been through. DNA gives water, or water, basically it starts with water, has an imprint or an infusion, it's probably a better way of putting it, of your DNA molecule. Now here's something else important about DNA. DNA was from the Human Genome Project, is 98% junk, according to the Human Genome Project. In other words, to make a human being and all your, your functions, your eyes, your hair, and everything else, you only need 2% of your human genome. What else is going on is another question that's very, very fascinating, Karen. And that thing that is going on is that we, inside that other 98%, and there's science now to prove this, there's way, way more going on. And all the energetic stuff that possibly many of the people here are listening to, that psychic stuff that we all talk about it, connection with a higher self, connection with the gravitational fields of the planet Earth, all that other woo-woo la-la stuff is in that other 98%. And you may think, oh, Richard, you are barking mad. Because I sound probably a little bit barking mad when I talk about it like that. But the point is, there is now science to say this is the case. That this is what's inside this other 98%. Mother Nature is not stupid. She has created something within DNA that is phenomenal. Now, you also might say, where is the proof? Well, the proof comes from the Russians. The Russians are the ones that are basically doing all this work. Because in America, we all know in America that it's basically based on, how could you describe it? If there isn't money in it, well, we're not going to do anything about it. It's all about the green stuff. Whereas in Russia, it's let's do the research, and that's where all this research is coming from that I'm finding. And the Russians, if you think the Luc Montagnier was off on a complete tangent, well, the Russian work is probably 10 to 15 years ahead of Luc Montagnier's work, and he is doing absolutely stunning work. And then the Russians are doing way, way ahead of everybody else. They now can, for example, the Russians are able to rebuild organs. That's what their next piece is, from the DNA structure that is trapped inside water, basically. So this is where they're going. So all that stuff that you remember from Star Trek that was completely out there?
Not so out there anymore.
No, and people might say, okay, so Richard, you're barking mad, everything else. Yeah, it may come across that way, but it isn't that way. The science is there to back this up. But you won't find it in Western science. You'll find it out in the Russian science, because these guys were doing stuff way, way beyond any of the other stuff. Like I said, that's the reason, and people challenge me on this stuff. And
so so the shock lands in all four systems? Yeah,
it lands in all four systems. It lands in the heart, in the brain, and the gut, then an organ.
So then how do you heal that in advanced clear energetics?
Well,
or how do we heal in general?
Okay, how do we heal? That's a really good question. So we know the shock lands in. Let's see if we can just go back and maybe. So what happens is, when the Yudin shock lands, it plugs itself into an organ and switches itself on. Okay, and that is really important in as far as it literally causes the organ to change itself. Okay, that's what's going on. So it changes itself, and let me just get a couple of other slides. And that's important. So the organ augments itself. It changes itself in order that we can heal. Okay, well, not heal, but heal from the shock. So the organ has, and this is very fascinating, the organ and its purpose for changing is that organ is directly linked to the environmental shock. What does that mean? Let's say a woman like our lady there, let's say that that shock means that she can no longer nurture the people that she loves. So she no longer can bring that, say, the man and her children, she's lost that connection with them, to the bosom of the family, okay? What then happens is that shock would land in her breast, causing a breast issue. Okay. Let's say that she loses in her husband the love of her life, and it's a different type of energy behind that shock. It would then land in her heart.
So it's her perception of in past history.
It's not the perception. This is the other thing. Everybody talks about this perception. It's actually the energy, and the energy is stored inside the system. So it's not perception. I also said something very important at the start. Every single shock that we experience is predestined. We are going to experience that shock come what may. So somewhere down the line in our past history, okay, we've had a minor shock. That shock may have come from an environmental condition, a change in the environment, a change in the, how would you describe it? Say, for example, an earthquake, a weather pattern. And we now know that earthquakes and weather patterns are related to sunspots. Okay, this is, you know, there's a direct correlation between what's going on with the sun and what's going on our planet, which changes the geomagnetic stress on the planet, which in turn then changes the type of environmental conditions that we're going through. So, you know, even the position of the moon and the position of the other planets, when they all line up, it changes our planet, which then changes specific conditions, which then change various environmental situations, and there are shifts then that occur, which then cause other shifts to happen, which then cause other shocks, which then lead on to other things, meaning we now can pretty well near enough say we are going to get a shock that is going to relate to this specific theme, which that is a particular type of energy which is going to land in our system. And what basically the water does, it knows this, and it's going to put us in an environment where that is going to occur.
So could you explain, you started to explain, like, so if this woman, her husband leaves her and she can't pull it towards her chest, and she can't, you know, to her bosom, and so she gets a type of breast cancer. But if you started to say that if, you know, the husband leaving him is something else, why would there be a difference?
Because of the usually what we will see is a theme, like I said, occurring within the person.
Ah, yeah, right.
Okay, so there's this energetic theme, and I think most of the people out here that are watching this will notice that they will have had a theme in their life. Mm-hmm. Like they've always had gut problems, or they've had heart problems, or the whole family has always had heart problems, or eye problems, or they might have had skin problems, or all the women all the way down the line have had breast problems, or the, you know, part of the women, they've always had weight problems. And it's a theme that shows up all the way down the line, and boy is it ever annoying. but it's there, and people go, but surely it's all, you know, what causes a disease is these viruses, these bacteria and everything else. No, they're all part of the whole big program, by the way. Now, so what I'm really saying is that what is occurring is we have a predestined shock that lands in these systems, and what causes it to land in the systems is the water is transmitting this information through our separate nervous systems. Most of it is pumped out to the heart, which brings us into a situation where we are going to experience the Yudin shock. So the Yudin shock is going to be predestined, and the whole point, the reason why, because people ask, well, why does it happen, is so that we learn, so that we update our information, actually so that we update the DNA, so we update the underlying records inside of us, so we evolve. Make sense?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
So how do you, now what? So we
Now,
have, okay.
so what basically happens is this, and this is what we're experiencing, and this is what we're finding in my work, Dance Clearing Energetics, or ACE for short. What we're finding is that if we go into these separate nervous systems, so if we go into the heart, the brain, the guts, the water system, and the crazy thing is my work has actually it started off with being able to talk to those separate nervous systems. And one day I sat down with a client and went, okay, let's go and have a chat with your heart. And sure enough, the heart sat there and it spoke back. It didn't quite sort of sit there as a heart, you know, pumping away, go bum, 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 with a cigarette and a whiskey and go, well, what it is, currency, is, you know, it's not like that. It produces the information slightly differently. And it shows it in pictures, in sounds, in feelings, and emotions, and some of that stuff comes out in language. But it's an energy behind it. And then I started talking to the brain and then to the gut system. And then very recently in August, I was looking at what causes inflammation, because, you know, if you think about it, water collects in and around an organ that it suddenly swells up. How does it do that? How does water know where to go? How do you suddenly get a knee that's swollen up, or an elbow, or a wrist, or even a face? How does it know where to go? No one's ever asked that question, as far as I know. So I went, well, if we can talk to these other systems, let's go and talk to the water. And you know what? It sat down with a whiskey and a cigarette and said, well, Richard. It started to talk back. And I went, oh, gee. And then as we started to piece all of this stuff together, and it took quite a while with myself and my students, what we started to find was there was this underlying pattern, this theme that a person had been going through most of their lives. And then we found out that something had changed in their environment that triggered off all of this. And then what happened is a damn disease showed up. And then sorry, yeah, let me.
No, I just, go ahead, I understand.
And then what I did was I said, well, how do we learn from that? How do we get the learning? Because that's basically what it is. Because each time we speak to these different parts, they turn around and they say, well, we don't know the answer. So I said, and this is again a little bit crazy, I said, well, maybe we need to just go and talk to the head office, you know? Let's go and have a chat with them upstairs, or him or her upstairs, or
God, the universe, right?
the universe, universal intelligence. So we did. I did. I said, well, let's go and have a chat. And so we started doing that, and sure enough, it answered back, and I was like, oh, hang on a minute. This is balmy. And it does sound a little bit balmy. And then we asked, well, how do we learn? Well, what do we do? And we just asked questions, and sure enough, the energy came in, would come down into the person's body, and they'd sit there, and some of them would feel it, others, nah. But then what we'd find is the Yudin shock, all the energy on that Yudin shock of, say, for example, that woman where the pesky husband's sitting there going, darling, you know, I've been sleeping with your best friend for the past 6 months. I know we've been married for 30 years, but I really love her and I'm leaving you. All of that, all that shock and all that horrible energy, gone. Nothing. Gone, just flat. Just like she can go into that event, experience it, and go, oh, what? Just, but I should hate him. I don't feel bad. I just, you know.
So you've cleared it.
It's nothing there. It's more than clearing it. It's just flat. And they have this sort of different understanding, not a learning, well, you know, all men are a bit stupid, nothing like that. It's like, I've got a spiritual understanding behind what went on. Okay, does that make sense? It's a really deep down spiritual understanding of what actually happened, rather than oh, well, you know, maybe men are a bit stupid, or he should never have done that, and I sort of forgive him. None of that. It's like, it's not even forgiveness. It's like, I still love him as a person. Let them go. Just let them go. And what then happens, you see, is because, and let me show you a couple of slides, and hopefully they won't flicker too much. Because basically what we now know, and I'll show you what's happening. Let me just put this on. Is we have stress. We have a stress, our Udin moment, which is number one there. And then the body goes into stress. And during that time, we feel cold, stress, we don't sleep, we eat energy foods, mostly carbs, sugar, chocolate, all that sort of stuff that shoves on all the weight. And the plugged in organ that I spoke about responds. And we also have this other thing that happens is you feel scared by what has happened, obsessive thinking. You say things like, well, what if I did this? Or what if I did that? Or what if I did, you know, and you're all stressed and you try and run this picture over and 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 over. And you don't sleep, you're stressed, the organ's stressed. And what we see is acidity in the organ. We see all the common stuff that all the naturopaths and all the other people say, you're too acid, you've got to get juicing, you've got to take alkaline, you've got to bring that stress level, get into meditation, all that sort of stuff. But you can't, because that organ and your brain is going like crazy. And you're going to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning and you're getting up at 5, 4 hours sleep, and you're still trying to solve the problem. You didn't have any sleep, but you're still running. That's what the stress stage is like. And during that time, the organ is changing because it's working to try and solve that problem. It's trying to find a solution. It's trying to learn, and it's all integrated with the whole system. And that's basically what's happening. So you feel scared, and energetically you feel fear. And then what happens is you go through what is called the Udin reversal. Okay, so the Udin happens, you go into this Udin reversal, and this is a really interesting time because the Udin reversal is the calm before the storm. It's like an eye of a storm, and it does a complete 180 degree. You believe the problem appears to be resolved, but it's temporary. The stress stops, the obsessive thinking goes away, but it's temporary, and you feel better. So just like this lady, maybe she meets someone else who becomes the love of her life. There's a time delay between that time, though, which can be hours, days, weeks, months, or even years. And basically, she does that, and then she feels relief, okay? She feels relief, which is the opposite of the Udin shock. And then this is the really neat bit, okay? Basically, what happens is our Udin moment lands, it goes all the way through the stress, goes into Udin reversal, and then it lands in number 4, and it shows up with pain. It's horrible. And then we also get an infection, and we also get a disease. And that's the point. This is what most people don't understand. I'm going to stop that from flickering. What basically is going on is we are going into healing. We're going into the disease program. We're going actually into a disease, and the infection comes up. We get all the basically disease. I mean, this is when you end up going to see the doctor, and that's basically what's happening there. It feels like you feel ill, you go to see your doctor, symptoms and pain kicks in, and the infection starts. Now, why the infection starts is too complicated to explain. But basically, that's what's happening, is your infection starts, and then you go through a couple of other things as well, too complicated to explain right now. But did you notice that there is this sort of delay from the shock right into when the disease occurs, number 4 there. And it's like, I'm just really annoyed that there's this flickering, which is annoying me, so it might be annoying. But basically what there is, we have this shock, and the shock travels all the way through this stress stage. So we're obsessive thinking. We don't actually feel that the organ's under stress. We won't get really any symptoms, not symptoms of the organ being infected or diseased. That happens later, Karen. Okay?
Okay.
Disease shows up later, so that's what actually causes a disease, is the Udin shock, the body going into stress, and what actually shows up and what causes the infection, what causes what we would commonly call a disease, is a Udin reversal. But the Udin reversal is completely linked to the Udin. Got
Right.
it?
Of course.
So they're one of the same. They're actually quite ironically, they're like I said, a 180 degree flip of the, like this. It's a 180 degree of the problem. But it isn't it hasn't solved the problem. The organ still has been under stress. Now it needs to repair and heal itself, and it repairs and it heals itself using what it has in its environment. And guess what? Bacteria, fungi, viruses are inside, and you've worked with symbiosis as a human being with those things all your life. You go off and say, for example, take a swab of take an earbud, put it in your belly button, then put that on a petri dish and grow the bacteria on that. It'll be unique to you, and there will be plenty of bacteria there. You have bacteria all over your body. You have bacteria all over inside you. You have fungi all over your body and inside you. And also you have viruses, viral chains, which are only protein chains anyway, in and around your whole body. You have been working with symbiosis with your environment continuously for the whole of your entire life. You have something like 50 trillion human cells inside your body, but you have 500 trillion bacterial and fungi and viral chains in your body, which 85% of them are in your gut. The rest is around your body. You are a walking, talking human piece of bacterial and viral and fungal, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And when you go across the border, and I go from Canada, because that's where I live, over to the United States, and the guy looks and says, this is a true reflection of you, and you go, well, it depends how you look at it, but whatever. And I don't say that because that just gets them all heated up. But anyway, it isn't. You are only 10% human. The rest of you is alien.
So when the body uses the environment that you're saying, this bacteria and fungi and things like that, what are you saying? What does it do with it?
It is rebuilding and repairing the organ that's been under stress. You see, when you put your body under stress, that organ goes to work. It's a bit like, say, for example, someone traveling from here up to Toronto, which is about 45 minutes on a good day without traffic, from where I live. And let's say that you're traveling along, and you go to work, and you get there by 9 o'clock, all right, 8:30, 9 o'clock. And you're in the office and you do your work, and at 5:30 you get back in your car and you drive home. It'll take you longer than 45 minutes, but let's just say that happens. And then one day what happens is your boss turns around and says, hey, you're not pulling your weight, and if you don't pull your weight, you're out of here. But they don't tell you why or what you had to pull your weight on or anything else. But that's basically like a you're in shock, and you just go, huh? So you start going into work early. So you get there by 7 and you leave at 7 at night. So it's a 12-hour day, and you start working really, really hard, and you try and solve all these problems. Your boss then comes up again and says, hey, still not cutting it. Sort it out or you're out of here, period. So then what you do is you say, well, I can't lose this job. This job is my life. If I lose a job, my whole entire life is up in arms. And I'll come back to that piece in a moment. But essentially, it could be a life and death situation for that person. Let's come back to the person now. They're working 7 hours a day, 12 hours a day. And it isn't a life and death situation. They're working 12 hours a day. They're working really hard. And they're working 6 days a week, okay? And they get 1 day off, Sunday. How much stress is that going to put that person under?
Of course, a lot.
So they're going to be drinking lots of coffee, and they go down to the local fast food chain, and they start eating the fast food stuff. Won't mention any names, but everybody can think of that. Drinking loads and loads of coffee, running as quickly as from the food. They probably say, oh, could you just go and get something for me? Because I've got too much work to do. So they're just working and working and working. They come home at night, and they're just exhausted, sit down, watch the latest episode of Game of Thrones or something, and then go to bed, and they're up at 5 o'clock driving to work and doing their work, and then Sunday they just need to rest a bit, but this stress that's going to put their body under is immense, right?
Hmm.
So what happens then when eventually the boss might turn around and says, hey, you need a break, go on holiday, you got 2 weeks off? What's going to happen then?
Well, according to what you just showed us, he's going to go into the part after the Uden reversal.
So let's say, or he or she is going to go home, let's say they booked to go down to, well, I live in Canada, so we would go down to Florida, right? You go down to Florida, down to sit in the sun, because it's cold up here, and you sit in the sun and you just go, oh, what would you do? Let's say you got all these things planned, but what honestly would happen?
Well, see, I know the actual answer to this question, but what happens is you don't really want to do anything because you're so dead tired from everything that you just lay down and, watch the ocean.
Right.
And
So what happens then with most people when they go on holiday just before they work, don't they? They work like absolute stink to get everything prepared. They're cleaning the house. They're running around trying to sort everything, get the cat and the dog, looked after, everybody together, and make sure everybody's in the car and they're on the plane, all that stress. And eventually they arrive at their destination and go, oh, right? So they're tired. Then they wake up the next day, they eat some of the local food, and guess what? They get sick. They're in bed. Sort of with stuff coming out one end and stuff coming out the other, or they get the flu, or sorry, yes.
So they believe that they got sick because they ate something or something occurred, and that's not what it is.
No.
It's because they've gone through that stress, reversed, and now the body's healing itself from all that. So how do you then clear it? I mean, or reverse it, or not have it trigger again, or whatever the words are. How do you get it so that how do you stop that Uden moment from doing that? And that's ACE?
That's ACE.
Okay.
Now, this is just so simple. Yeah, because Mother Nature's given us the answers, right? She's darn clever, really darn clever. Now, this is what happened. One day I worked out, it's a long time ago that I worked this out, so many years ago, but I said, okay, so if Mother Nature has dealt us this particular card, and we've got this Uden moment, and basically, what would happen if we reverse engineered that? And so what I did was, and now my recent work is, and I'll give you the most updated piece, is I knew that each organ had an environmental connection. So then what we do is we go into the organ and we say, hey, you've got a breast issue, okay? There's a growth there or whatever. And we go and talk to the growth, and the growth tells us, well, I had this really horrible situation with this guy. I've been married to him for 30 years, and he turns around and he says he's sleeping with best friend. Now I can't nurture him, and I hate that woman. And also, what do I do with the children? What do I tell them? So on and so forth. And it all comes out, right? Mm-hmm. Not necessarily, she might actually just turn around and say that sort of stuff, but she might just say, I just feel sick. I just feel really angry, and I feel totally separated from, and I don't know why. Then we go into the heart, we go into the brain, we go into the gut, and we ask the same question. No different, just same question. And then we go into the water system. And you know what? They all answer back, and we just get this big, massive theme. And it's like, then I just say to the client, would you notice? And she says, oh, gee, I played this all my life. This is exactly the pattern I played. Then we go up and talk to God, and we do a couple of other things, and we clear out all the epigenetic reasons, all that sort of stuff, and we bring down a different energy into the body, and that's it. The body then can go and get on with healing. Because if there's no stress behind it, the body then heals itself. The body will go into a natural healing. The client will just get warm and hot. The actual breast will start to change. You might get an infection, but then that infection will eventually go. She might have to go and see a doctor. But essentially, Mother Nature knows exactly how to heal, and she will do it naturally, given the right conditions.
Right. So let's talk about, because we don't have a lot of time left, let's talk about some of the chronic diseases out there and how what you're saying works into it. So we've talked about breast cancer. What about something like heart disease?
Yeah, heart disease is really fascinating. Again, it's an issue with the heart, and they're usually to do with our territory. And what does that really mean? Well, you think about it, the territory is our home, our nest. For a woman, it might be their nest, okay? For a man, it might be their shed. I'm English, so we all have sheds. Or for a North American person, it will be their garage or their car, right? Whereas a woman, it's actually the home. So let's say that someone comes in and they take away that nest. Let's say that someone comes in and says, okay, they steal their husband. Another woman steals their husband, okay? Well,
could it also be like a fire or something like that?
It could be a fire or a job.
Mm-hmm.
Or someone actually, comes in and steals
Mm-hmm.
from them. So they're taking something away from their territory, and the person gets really, really, really angry. But as a woman, because women are very social, they would never show it. They go, yes, I'm a little bit pissed off.
Not all of us.
They're fuming, right? Whereas a man, what a man does, he gets really angry, and he would literally want to go out and say, if it was a boss, suddenly a boss came in and says, well, you're sacked. Why? I'm not telling you. Get your stuff, leave. You're out of here now. Go. And the person says, well, why? Why? And they go, what did I do? What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? No particular reason. Total in shock. Total loss of all their salary. Can't even claim anything. They've been sacked. Well, that's the type of territorial shock. And they end up just, destitute practically, or trying to find another job. But they can't even tell their new employer why. A woman, let's say the husband just suddenly comes home and just says, well, I've been sleeping with your best friend. And she goes, my best friend? How the hell did that happen? I hate my best friend. I am not angry. I'd kill her if I could, but I'm a woman. I don't do that sort of thing. So these are the types of things that cause heart disease. Now, what basically happens is that it furs up the coronary arteries. Sorry, it causes the coronary arteries. I actually have a little slide on this, to thin. They get thinner, okay? I don't think this is the best
We
one.
only have a couple minutes, Richard. So.
Okay, so it gets thinner. So the coronary arteries actually get thinner inside. And then what happens is the inside furs up when it goes into healing with cholesterol, okay? And that then blocks the coronary arteries. And in doing so, it causes then, when it changes over time, can cause a heart attack. That's basically it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. So it's depending upon where it lands in the organ, you can pretty much tell what's going on and what the udin is.
Exactly.
So let's do one more quick one, like addiction.
Addictions, very interesting. Addictions are two really wonderfully pleasant, when I say pleasant, really wonderfully pleasant udin moments. Okay? Instead of being horrific and horrible, they're nice. Oh. There's a twist to them.
Okay.
Okay, it's a bit like, say, for example, one of my clients, she used to sit down with her grandfather, and her grandfather, but would rub her in a place that was totally inappropriate for a grandfather to rub. All right, you get the picture. Mm-hmm. Now, she liked that because it was a special connection between her and her grandfather. And this went on until she was about 13. She was very young, and then it was 13. And they had this connection. And it was wrong, completely and utterly wrong. I'm not condoning it in any shape, form, or fashion, but it was wrong. And then what would happen, and the last thing that happened with that was that she was caught with the grandfather. And in being caught with the grandfather, what then happened was that she felt it was wrong. He knew it was wrong. She never, ever had that connection with the grandfather ever again. A couple of years later, he died. And so then there was this shock. Now, two of these shocks land in a place in the brain called the nucleus accumbens. The nucleus accumbens is the pleasure center of the brain. So they're basically, what happens is this: one, it's wrong, and she knows it's wrong with the grandfather. Two, then she gets caught, and it's all wrong, but it feels so nice. So why should something so nice be so wrong? And that's basically what lands in these places. And the person then becomes, they're stuck in this loop. It feels so nice, but it's wrong. But why does it feel so nice? But I know it's wrong. But it feels so nice, but it's wrong. But I know it feels so nice, but why is it wrong? Why can't my grandfather touch me there? But, you know, it feels so nice, but I know it's wrong. But what do I do about it? Why is it wrong? Well, you shouldn't do that. But who says?
So how does
it goes around in a loop, and it just goes around and round and around and around, and the person never completes that loop. They can't get the answer, which means what they then do is they go off and try and complete that incomplete loop. They're continuously trying to find an answer, and the only way they can get the answer is to go off and rework the addiction, to go off and they get sexually addicted in that instance. So they go off and they start to find older men, and they have sex with the older man to try and find that answer. Why is it wrong? But they can't find the answer. You with me?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I'm sorry we're out of time, because I could ask you a bunch of diseases and be interested in and what is causing it. So if you would please just tell people your website again.
Well, there's a website which is advancedclearingenergetics.com, but there's another one where you can actually find me talking to Karen called richardflook.com. Just go to richardflook.com, and up there on the left-hand side, is it left, whatever, right-hand side, it's obvious, will be what's the disease behind, or what's the shock behind, that's it. And I think we do breast cancer, we do knee, we do other sorts of things.
Alopecia, we do a lot of different things. And that's one of the, I call it, you know, the game we play. I throw a disease at you and you tell me what the shock is. And it's extremely interesting and very quick. So, you know, how you come up with this. Very fascinated, Richard.
And just to finally, if people want to speak to me and they want to find out other answers about my courses or anything else like that, there's links on there to just actually book some time with me, and I'll share with you, and I'll take someone through all this. And maybe they want to see one of my practitioners, or they want to do a course with me. That's the place to go, and I'm more than happy to share this information with you. And I'm not in some ivory tower. I am actually a person who will speak to you. So book the time, richardfluke.com. It's my name, and you'll just get straight through to me. And
it's also linked on the Living Energy Day site. So Richard, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Karen Davidson at howtotap.com. And Richard, thanks so much for your time.
Karen, it's always a pleasure talking to you. You know, anyway.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.